Good morning, everyone. I am Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer, Sales Coach, International Keynote Speaker. Want to welcome you to today's sales training session, as I often open. If it's 9 o'clock, we're going to be in front of the camera here in the Old Pueblo. So thank you so much for being here. Contrary to popular opinion, we have not burst into flames yet. I can't guarantee that it won't happen today. But contrary to popular opinion, we in Tucson are still here, we're still alive, and we're still kicking. And my mom calls me on Monday, and she's like, my mom's 84, she goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, Mom, I'm fine." "Why?" She goes, "Because it's so hot." God loves my mom, right? And I'm like, "Mom, I've been here for 8 years, right? It's always hot." Yeah. Well, you know, there's really no much, there's not, when it's 111 to 113, there's not, it doesn't really feel like you go, "Oh my God, I'm chilly, it's only 111, right? Yeah. Nothing like that. But I always tell them that we're only hot for 60 seconds at a time. You go from an air-conditioned car into an air-conditioned auditorium, and from an air-conditioned auditorium into an air-conditioned office. Yes. So enough. But thank you for being here. We really appreciate that. One of the things that we often say is that it's not lost by us, not lost on us, that there's a lot of things vying for your attention in today's kind of post-pandemic world. And the fact that you're here is enormously appreciated. Hopefully you get a lot out of it. You'll see that Mr. Waechter is on assignment. He's actually in Atlanta today. So we wish him a very successful trip. He'll be here next Friday. Nice. But of course, my partner, our new partner in crime, David, is going to be joining us today. So, David, in the world, I love to start with current events because in sales, we are so much in terms of what's happening in the world, and it's interesting. I actually had a salesperson tell me last week. They go, "When it's this hot, I don't want to go out." Really, when it's this hot, I don't want to go out. Now, I guess there's a practical reality that when it literally is this hot, nobody wants to go out. But in sales, again, we eat what we kill in most places. So I always tell people, there's enough reasons for you not to make a sale. Right? The world doesn't need any more, right? Don't, whether it's too hot or too cold or the sun's too bright or, I got up early, I did whatever the reason is. Half of it is just showing up, being out in the world. And I tell people all the time, when you're out in the world, you go to an event that you really didn't want to go to, and not surprisingly, you have a great time from it. So be out in the world. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think definitely when you study great salespeople and you study the actual analytics, just like Don is talking about, guys, when you talk about the best people, almost 60% of people will always stop short of the amount of calls that's necessary, going to the next door, talking to the next prospect. And the difference between people who are successful, who are professional salespeople, they recognize their job is to go to the bell. Yes. And recognizing that it's most people just give up early, most people stop early, and it's the people who are professional who recognize that, and the people who are actually the most successful salespeople.
Absolutely, yeah. Often I tell people, you don't realize how, when you're lost, you don't know how close you are to being found.
Nice, I like that.
And especially in sales, it's almost like, there's that critical language, the straw that broke the camel's back. There is a divergent view of that, and it's the call, or it's the sale, or it's the second, the next door that or someone else. And there's a great analogy, and I'll go kind of a long way to make a point, but I think it's so important. I like horse racing. All right, now, people are like, "Yeah, Don, gambling is bad." Like, I'll bet $2, and when I win, I scream like an 8-year-old girl. All right, but it's interesting if you look at horse racing. You might have 5 or 10 or more horses in the race, and it's interesting that the first horse generally makes 10 times more money than the last horse. Now, the first horse isn't 10 times better.
Correct.
Right? Sometimes it's a length, which is the length of the horse. Sometimes it's a head better, which is the length of the head. Sometimes it's a nose better. But the leading horse makes 10 times more money, and yet it's not 10 times better. You don't have to be 10 times better than everyone else. A lot of times, it's just a little. So if your company says, obligates you to make 20 calls a day, I will guarantee the vast majority of the people in your world can't wait to finish that 20th call to be done.
Right.
The real killers are on that 21st and 22nd and 23rd, and when everyone else is hanging up their stuff, and they make that big sale, and it's like, "Oh, I made my money for today. I'm done. I'm calling it early." No, Fridays. right? Fridays, historically, most people disappear.
They try to leave
yeah.
early.
And I will tell you that literally there are less people out in the world to compete against generally on Fridays because most are trying to figure out ways to get done. So again, you know, this is up to you. I can't want it more than you, but I can give you the behavior. So I can't tell you who's going to buy. You can't arm wrestle somebody to the ground and force them to sign. However, you can control the behaviors that create a buying environment. Prospecting is certainly one of them. So, David, what are you going to regale us with today in your opening session?
Yeah, so today, what I love to do is sort of go through different points that people can go through. You know, what the powerful thing about people and students is that different topics and different content reach different people, right? And so sometimes by bouncing around a little bit, what we're able to do is going to reach most people individually. And I hope today I'll be able to give you guys just a little bit of those tips, a little bit of touch of greatness. So
I love touch of greatness. Let me go grab my stuff and my phone and make sure that it doesn't inadvertently ring while you're out there because I'm notorious for that. So thank you so much, and I'll be back in a moment.
Nice. So I think once again, thank you, Don, for that. I think, you know, when Don uses the horse racing analogy, I think similarly the one I use is I always say that the LeBron James analogy, right? LeBron James, you know, the difference between LeBron James and everybody else in the NBA is that LeBron James is not, you know, 20 times better, 50 times better than any other player. LeBron James just does everything maybe 5%, 10% better than the next person. But when you take those little percentages and you add them up, that is what adds to his greatness. And so as students of the game, as all of us should be, constant seekers of knowledge, what our job is always to be is be able to say, how can I improve just that, just a little bit more? And if we constantly try to work on improving ourselves just a little bit, in the end, we're going to be able to make some great gains. Does that make sense, guys?
Absolutely.
Of course. So today, what I wanted to do was talk about the differences or some things that, you know, common salespeople versus professionals, okay? And so these are going to be different topics, going to bounce around, but I definitely believe that you're definitely going to be able to get some great things from. So the first thing I want to talk about is sort of how we actually look at ourselves, okay? And when I say ourselves, I look at myself as a professional salesperson. I look at myself as a trained salesperson, obviously like Don is as well. I'm a student to Don as well, but once again, the difference is that, you know, we're here to try to spread some knowledge so we can get people from just being salespeople to get them to be trained and professional salespeople. Does that make sense? So the first thing is looking at yourself as a sifter, okay, and not a creator. What do I mean by that? Guys, what we have to recognize is that great salespeople and people who sell, you know, when you say great, most people consider greatness in terms of how much more they sell than everybody else. And what we have to recognize is that the difference is that normal salespeople think the difference between being good and bad is that they can somebody can take someone and make them into customers. But in reality, professionals understand that it's not about just trying to make someone into a customer, it's finding the right customers, right? And so we call that being a sifter. So when you're a sifter, you recognize the difference that I have to sift through. When I use sift as a great analogy, as in maybe when you're going for gold, right? When you're sifting for gold, you're going through all the sediment, right? And as you're going through the sediment, gold, you're looking for these gold flecks. And it's the recognizing that we're looking for gold flecks. Sometimes most people think that, let's say, I would say regular salespeople see people in probably two ways. People who are yeses, right? And just no's, okay? I would argue that professionals see customers in almost in four fashions, okay? I would say the first one is called, I say BH, a buyers in heat, buyers in power, okay? For lack of a better term, like a looky-loos, okay? And then maybe I just for people who are just in the wrong funnel, okay? And so what is a buyers in heat? Buyers in heat are people who want your product, who have a sense of urgency about your product, and they're the best type of person because obviously they want it now and they need it now. And for us as salespeople, these are obviously we call those people juicy people, right? Mm-hmm. The next person is buyers in power. The difference is that a buyers in power, they want your product. The difference is they lack the sense of urgency. And so as professionals, we recognize these people as the people we need to work on. And our job is to transition a person from a buyers in power. The reason they're called buyers in power is because there's no urgency to actually buy now. Therefore, they're put in a position of power. Those are the type of customers or clients that sort of maybe there's no rush to give you a call back, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they keep postponing maybe meetings and things like that. You've already identified them as customers or clients that need your product, but there's something why they're not all the way there. Sometimes, as you know, Don talks about this all the time, is that sometimes we're being used as a quote, right? We are being used as someone to say, give me your quote so I can use this number to go get a better number. Buyers in power are going to be the people who are in that position so that they're doing it. So recognizing that they're buyers in power, and our job is to sift them and recognize who they are so that we can put the work in to transition them into buyers in heat. The next person, I believe, is sort of the worst type of a customer, right? The looky-loo, right? These are customers who they act like they want your product, they act like they need it, but guess what? They don't have the means and have no intention of ever doing it. But the worst reason these people are there is that as you're taking them through a sales process, what they tend to do is that you take them through the whole process, and as they're doing that, they're going to act like they're interested, but in reality, these people, they are going to give you some tell signs that they're not really the right people. And some of the tell signs that usually when we're talking about looky-loos is that whenever it comes down to maybe breaking down things like, okay, when you're going through products, they're over dramatic. Right? So the difference between this is that, this comes with 36 millimeter megapixels. And they're like, wow. It's like, yeah, I get it. But you're overdoing it, right? Like we know what regular customers are, even people who want your product. Most people know the features anyway. But someone who's being a little bit over dramatic about every feature you're talking about, or when it comes to price, when you start talking about real things when it comes to price, sometimes maybe they're over dramatizing. Oh yeah, of course, sure. They're quick and short about the things that matter. When it comes to people who are really our buyers, those are things that they take their time with. And so as professionals, our job is to try to recognize and find these tells to recognize these customers as looky-loos. And then obviously the fourth one is people who are in the wrong funnel, right? What does that mean? You're going to be put in a position where someone will just sort of end up in front of you and they'll be like, you'll start talking to them, and once again, this is why we have to be good at qualifying. Someone's like, I didn't even know we were here for a sales presentation. I thought they were showing the new Mario's movie, right? Once again, it's the recognizing that, yeah, this person's just in the wrong place, okay? Being a sifter and not a creator. Guys, the best people, the people who sell the most, guess what? They also take the most no's. What does that mean? It's the reality. They're sifting, so therefore they recognize they qualify early. Okay? Don talks about this all the time, but we also close early. I want to close early. Why? Because it gives me more opportunity to what? Maybe work on some of those objections and recognize, guess what? You're not the person, so I'm going to move on to the next person, right? When it comes to people who are great salespeople, they qualify early, they close early, they take more no's. Take more no's, okay? And versus people who just believe we're just creating out of it, right? What would be the next thing? Okay. This is the one that me and John were just talking about prior. Why don't I just throw this away? Mm-hmm. Okay? This one's interesting, okay? So most people, when you start going into, we call it the gathering information stage, okay? When you're in this stage, unfortunately, I would say not amateurs, but normal salespeople, jump right in, just start asking questions, right? Jump right in, trying to figure out, what do I gotta do, what do I gotta do? But what we realize that the trained salespeople learn that our job is they always ask permission, okay? Ask permission to ask questions. Okay? Asking permission, okay, when you ask permission, you're setting a precedent, right? You're setting the precedent that I'm taking you down this alley, and other things, what it does is it actually sets up that you're the expert. Okay? Our job is that we want to quickly, in the beginning, in the gathering stage, is that my job is to let you know I'm the expert, and I'm going to ask you these questions in this order as well, right? More important, we recognize that instead of, we want to be perceived as a trusted advisor. Okay? You want to be seen as a trusted advisor, not just the, what's the term? The grand inquisitor, right? You're just asking questions to ask questions. No, you're letting them know that this, as a professional, once again, our job is to establish this early. I need to ask you these questions so I can get to this, right? What are some easy ways, we can ask, these simple ways we can say these things could be, hey, Don, just a couple of quick questions so I don't waste your time today, okay? Or, Don, let me ask you a couple of questions so I can best serve you, right? Don, let me ask you a couple of questions so I know exactly what your needs are. Okay? And even in these types of questions that I'm giving you examples for, can you guys notice that we're always going to use a transition word? Did you guys notice that word I kept using? Mm-hmm. Okay? The word is so. Okay? And we're going to use the word so because so is used as a justifier. Okay? We're using justifier because we always going to say, this is going to justify why I'm asking you a question. So, Don, let me ask you a couple quick questions so I can gather enough information so I can best serve you, right? So the so is used to make sure you know that as the salesperson, I'm going to need A plus B plus C so I can give you and deliver you D. Right? And so making sure that we recognize that always asking permission before we start is not only sets you up as an expert, but more importantly, it creates the environment that we're becoming trusted advisors and we're able to take them through the sales process in a better fashion. Let me see some other things, great things. Oh yeah, sort of on the same lines, okay? So in terms of asking questions, right? Another thing is just always maybe asking questions, but when you ask your questions, make sure your questions are in the correct order. What do I mean by that? So sometimes people start questioning, you want to ask your question from less invasive to more invasive. Seems obvious, but unfortunately, a lot of untrained people jump right into the abyss, start asking questions about something that you actually did not set the precedent and you didn't set the tone of the relationship great enough that you're allowed for me to ask me that, right? Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're a financial advisor. The first question I'm not asking you is like, how much money do you have liquid right now that you can use in the next 7 days? I'm not going to ask you that, right? I might just ask you, okay, hey, so how long have you been working at your job? Great. How has that been? Okay? I'm setting them up. Less invasive to more invasive, okay? Regardless of your industry, we all know what we need to get to so that we can get the correct information so that we can use that later so we can move on in our sales process. But we have to recognize, we have to say these things in the correct order from less invasive to more invasive, okay? It is a process, okay? Even while doing it, it's something called, even from a psychological level, it's like you're desensitizing them, right? As you take them through these steps, what you're doing is starting to get them to recognize, okay, that's not too bad. No, that's not so bad. No, we're cool. I get it. We're cool. We're cool. And slowly but surely, my questions can start to become a little bit more invasive, a little bit more invasive. And if somebody was to ask my last question first, that person might be even being offended. But the reason it's not going to be offended is that we're taking them through this journey, understanding the order, going from less invasive to more invasive. Let's move on in understanding order and questioning. Guys, the next thing is that when we always talking about this, and I always refer to Don as well with this, is that Don always talks about being, they say it's the law of congruency, right? It's like how you're supposed to be perceived. You're perceived as an expert. And as an expert, you should know how to take someone through a logical path of questioning, right? When your questioning is out of order, what happens to is naturally as people is that a red flag goes on. It's like, wait, that was weird. Why did he ask me that in that order? It sort of makes you realize that, you know what, you're not an expert as I thought you were. And what do I mean by logical path order? I'm just going to use this as an example, okay? Let's just say, where do you live? Where do you live? Are you married? Great. Are you employed or self-employed? How many kids do you have? Great. Do you love where you work? Okay. Naturally, when you hear these questions, unfortunately, because they're not in a logical path order, in your brain, you're saying, wait, if you ask me where do I live, the next person you can ask me if I'm married, if I'm self-employed, why would you ask me about my kids, right? Normally, a normal logical path was maybe, where do you live? How long have you lived there? How do you like that place? Great, okay. Are you self-employed or do you work for someone else? Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, so how long you been working there, right? Great. Oh, are you married or are you single? Great. How many kids do you have? When you're taking them through this logical path order, once again, what you're doing is setting the tone. I use a Tetris analogy. You're filling the blocks in so we're creating a straight line. And when you do this to the customer or your clients, what it does is it's not that if you do this wrong, you're going to end your sale. But what it does is it starts to create little red flags. Almost they say like, a death of 1,000 cuts. Right? It's not gonna lose the sale, but slowly but surely, you're giving red flags to the customer that, you know what, maybe I thought you were a little bit more of an expert than you are. And your job is to always put yourself in the best position and not give yourself losing a foothold just by doing something as simple as not recognizing the order in which the questions I'm going to ask you. And learning that I must take my questions from less invasive to more invasive so I can actually get deeper and actually find the actual jewels that we're actually searching for. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. This is going to be fun. I've been wanting to do this, but I haven't been able to do it. Throw things away, right? Okay. One of the last things is talking about here is we're talking about body language. Okay? When you're talking to someone, your body language matters a lot, okay? And one of the greatest things is that some people just think, okay, when I ask questions, my job is to talk to the people, right? Of course I'm listening, right? The difference between, I would say, a professional and someone who's just doing their job is that a professional recognizes that you're not only listening, but we want to practice active listening, okay? Listening, sorry. What do I mean by that? Okay, some of the first things that we can do. Some of these are obvious, but we're gonna break them down, okay? Obviously, one of the first things we wanna do is when people are talking, obviously, we wanna make sure we're nodding our head, okay? nodding our head to the prospect as they're speaking, right? What does this do? It shows that you understand what they're saying, but more importantly, we're on the same page. So as they're talking, we're nodding our head, right? The next thing. We're narrowing our eyes and compressing our lips, okay? So narrowing your eyes, you do a little bit of narrowing like this, right? And compressing your lips, that's like, right? So what are these things doing? Once again, as you guys know, almost 60%, 70% of our language is body language, right? And so it's not about what you're saying, it's that what you're giving off to that customer or client to recognize, are you really listening to me? And so when you're narrowing your eyes and compressing your lips, what it does is that, especially when the prospect is telling you something important, so as they're talking, you say, okay, it shows that, wait, I recognize that you're saying something important, and I'm going to show you actively that I recognize that something's important that you're saying. And so once again, this shows that, are you actually listening to me? Yeah, because I can tell by your whole body language change through your narrowing your eyes and compressing of your lips, shows me you're actually paying attention to what I'm saying, right? Boom. The next thing I would say is, number 3 is do this, do number 2, but do it more, right? You do it more, right? Even more when the topic you're talking about is talking about a pain point. Okay? So as far as you've narrowed it, you're going to narrow it a little bit more, right? You're going to compress your lips a little bit more. And what we're going to do to add to that, we're going to add a little bit of oohs. Right? We're going to add a little bit of ahs, okay? And what that's doing is showing that, once again, you recognize that this is something, a pain point that you're dealing with. So, you wouldn't understand the pain that my family's going through. And as they're starting to talk about this, your eyes is going to start to narrow. You're going to say, I understand, right? You intrinsically, obviously, you want to make sure that oohs and ahs make sense, right? You don't want to put them out of place.
Right.
So once again, because we're going to run flags, it's like, wait, that doesn't make logical sense. Why did you say ooh to something that, that's funny or something like that? So once again, obviously, we always have to have context to what we're talking about, but making sure that when you put these in the appropriate time, it shows that you actively are feeling their pain as well, right? Number 4. Leaning forward, okay? Leaning forward. When you're asking someone an emotionally charged question, you want to lean forward, okay? Stay forward. And when they answer you, also stay forward when they're answering your question as well, right? Once again, while you're doing this, you can add a little bit of 3 in there. When they answer you back, you can hit them with a few, okay, and doing as well, right? And lastly, in terms of body language, is leaning back. So when you lean back, on questions that are based in logic. And when they answer, once again, you're also going to lean back. Okay, stay leaning back when they answer, making sure to nod, even an eyebrow, raise your eyebrow when they say something that's interesting to you or you think is different, raise your eyebrow. Okay? And so what it is that when something is internal, emotional, our job as professionals to recognize my job is to get closer to you and recognize that my job is to be in that friend zone and enter a zone of, okay, and maybe I'm not necessarily next to you, but I lean towards you emotionally. I understand what you're going through. But when I'm asking you something to do logical, I actually want to give you room, right? Almost metaphysically, I'm giving you room to actually answer that logically, and let me hear what you're going to answer. And I'm going to be waiting in anticipation. I'm the person, I don't know, I like to do the chin scratch as well. But once again, leaning back and recognizing, okay, tell me what you got. And when they say something interesting, show that you're like, okay, I never thought of that. And once again, these are just great moments of active listening that we can do as well. So, guys, maybe in terms of what we went through today, one of the first things is going to be the recognition that, one, we are sifters and not creators, right? That means our job is that we're sifting through customers and different customer profiles, searching for the right people that we want to spend time with, okay? Professionals recognize that our time is the most invaluable thing. Therefore, we need to spend time with the right people, right? Number two is understanding that before we get into gathering information stage and asking questions, we want to make sure as professionals that we actually ask permission to ask these questions. What that does is set you up as one, setting a precedent that this is going to be a give and take relationship. Two, I'm going to ask permission. So I ask permission that let me start this process. Three, you're going to recognize that you're an expert and that you need this information to best serve them, right? Three, recognizing the order in which we ask questions today, guys, right? We want to ask questions from less invasive to most invasive in that order, making sure we do that in that order. And other things in terms of order is that when you're dealing with questions and you're taking them through a logical path, take them through a logical path direction, right? Don't go in a direction, go backwards. Always keep moving forward. Take them through the straight line. And last but not least, when we're listening, when we ask all these questions, we have to be amazing listeners, but not amazing, but active. So that means that we're taking active effort to make sure we show them that not only we're listening, we're recognizing, understanding what you're saying through our body language. All right?
That was excellent. That was so good. You know, it's interesting because you had said a couple of things which I love the sifting line. I've never heard that before. But I love the ideology of it because most people don't realize that they get lots of opportunities. Your clients will give you lots of different signs, but they're so interested in telling what they have to say that they don't leave the space to actually listen to what they say. They will tell you. Mm-hmm. If you listen, they will tell you. So that was excellent. Thank you so much. All right, then we are going to get started on my session. So my session is going to be the phone is your best friend. This is an attitudinal session because it's really going to force you to look a little bit differently. And as we talked about, our sessions are either attitude, behavior, or technique. It's either going to be, technique is, the words, right? What we're going to say, how we're going to say it. Behaviors are how we create the environment to say the words. But ultimately, I can't move your lips for you. You have to do that. You have to have the attitude to do that. So I'm gonna put you in a time capsule. And I want you to go back to the 1960s. So we've all seen, if you watched Mad Men, one of my personal favorites, right? You watch Mad Men, and you look at what now, again, take out all the infidelity and rampant drinking and smoking, right? But if you look at what business looks like in the 1960s, it's a pretty good cross-section. Again, I was born in 1961, and my dad owned the company that we had. So I'm a kid of always a self-employed person. And I remember going in my dad's office, again, in the 60s and early 70s. That's what I saw. So what you see there is not terribly different. They've done a very good job. Because in the 1960s, the peak of technology that you had was the phone. That was it, right? I mean, there was nothing. There was the phone. There was no, at that point in time, there wasn't even answering machines. There was no faxes, clearly no computers, no internet, no nothing. You had the phone. And it was interesting that as we have progressed, and well, I use the word progress very loosely, as we have progressed in our technology, we've now done everything that we can do to distance ourselves from our clients, to take away from that face-to-face or at the very least on the phone. And then we have all of these other things which we're absolutely convinced have helped us, right? Now we have voicemail and texts and email and, years ago, I remember looking at a fax machine in the 70s going, oh my God, what are they going to think of next? This is everything they're ever going to think of, right? now I give people my fax number, and they're like, dude, you still got a fax? Really? Can I see it? Like it deserves to be in a museum, right? But again, technology changes, right? We bought new computers for the office back in Michigan, right? And I happened to comment about putting a CD in. And one of the ladies who works for me is 25. She's like, Mr. Zavis, these don't take CDs. And I'm like, well, how do you play music and how do you download new software and stuff? She goes, Mr. Zavis, we don't do that anymore.
It's all in the cloud.
Exactly, yeah. He goes, yeah, we don't do, well, if we buy new printers, how are we going to, instruct the printers, how the computers are going to work the printer? She's like, Mr. Zavis, it kind of does it by itself. Right? And she's almost, and I mean, I felt bad because I felt like I was humiliating her. But again, I'm going to take you to a place so I want you to kind of get back in that time capsule. But I want you to look at a lot of the things that the phone did that all of these other things have not given us to. In my humble opinion, all right, I don't think it's necessarily made us better because I've always adopted a posture in my world that professional selling is still an eye-to-eye, face-to-face, belly-to-belly business.
Yes.
Right? You're never going to get two heads of state that are going to do anything substantive by voicemail or text or email. You cannot separate that face-to-face. Again, we're social creatures. We survive best in that environment. So I want you to write down the idea. So I want you to write down your phone is your best friend, and we're going to talk about what I call instant feedback. So that's number one. Instant feedback. So let me give you an example of what instant feedback sounds like, and I'll give you an example of what instant feedback is not. So let's start with the not at first. So say, for example, you do email prospecting, which many people do. Many people do, right? And they're so excited. Mr. Zavis, I sent out 20,000 emails this morning. And they get all giddy when they get a 1 or 2% response, and it's a crappy response on top of that. But I've never had a situation where I've ever sent an email to company A. And I sent the email to Joe Wingerwanger, and in reality, Joe Wingerwanger was not the actual contact person. Bonnie Smith was the actual contact person. I have never, not one time, in all of my long business history, ever had Joe Wingerwanger call me on my blanket prospecting emails and say, hey, Don, we got one of your random cold call emails, and you sent it to me, and actually I'm not the contact person. You want to talk to Bonnie Smith. I've never had that happen one time, and I've probably sent out in my life 1 million emails. Never once have I had anyone ever come back and correct me on anything that was set to my email. So now let me go to a different situation. So now I call ABC Company, and Sally's secretary says, well, Mr. Jones heads up our sales. He'd probably be somebody that you'd speak with. And I'd say, great, can you put me through to Mr. Jones? And I talk to Mr. Jones, and I say, hi, Mr. Jones, I'm Don Zavis from Don Zavis Sales Training, and I'm an amazing sales trader, blah-bitty-blah-bitty-blah-bitty-blah. Now, if Mr. Jones isn't the correct contact person, what will Mr. Jones tell you on the phone? Exactly. Well, Don, thank you so much for the call, but that's actually handled by HR. You're going to want to talk to Marge. Let me put you through to her. And now when Marge says, hi, Marge speaking, and I say, hey, Marge, this is Don Zavis. I'm from Don Zavis Sales Training. I was just talking to Bob Smith, and he asked me to talk to you about possibly getting involved in a training program. Do you have a moment? Instant feedback, which you never get, right? When you send out a blanket email and it bounces back, you have no idea why, right? It's just a blank. Even if you find out, a lot of times you'll send them out, have no idea. There you are, you're all giddy. I sent out 10,000 and found out 3,000 went nowhere. The phone gives you instant feedback. It lets you know if you're going in the right direction or the wrong direction. And much like a thread would be in an email, you also have threads in a phone call. So when I talk to Marge and I say, Marge, I was just talking to Bob Smith, and he said that he thinks that it might be interesting to get involved in a sales training program, and he thought it'd be best for me to talk to you. Now I'm just not walking in the door myself. I got Bob Smith with me, Because Bob Smith was the one that said, call Marge. Bob Smith didn't say, well, give me your name and number, and I'll look around and figure out who to give it to. Never happens. Never, ever happens. Instant feedback. Are you going in the right direction? Are you going in the wrong direction? Should you be talking to somebody else? Maybe they just did it last month, and there's no way in the world they're going to do it again. The phone is your best friend because the best thing is face-to-face. But the second best thing is the phone.
Let's go.
And if you think of it in just terms of time saving, right now they say 9 out of every 10 calls goes to voicemail. 9 out of every 10 calls goes to voicemail. Now, how long does it take you to leave a compelling voicemail? Not even a cold call. Just you're calling somebody who's expecting your call. How long does it take you to leave that voicemail? Take a shot. 10 seconds? Maybe 15, 20 seconds, a lot? Right. How long does it take you to write that exact email? Virtually the exact same words. Statistically, it's anywhere from 4 to 5 times longer. By the time you do everything. Once I have your phone number, I can dial that in 28 seconds, right? Bang, I'm done. I'm in and out in less than 30 seconds, and now you have, in my voice, exactly what I want to say. Not the interpretive wording on a piece of paper. I can have my inflections. You have my tonality. You have all the critical stuff that never finds its way into the written word. And that's why when you look at texts, almost immediately after text came out, they came out with emojis. And the emojis was the mechanism they needed to use to put tonality and emotion to the written word. I don't have to do that. Right? I have these people all the time. They must think I'm a 13-year-old girl. They'll send me a text and I'll have like a, ice cream cone and a unicorn and a shooting star and, and I'm like, what? I'm not a 13-year-old girl, right? Don't do this. Call me. You only use a non-phone, non-face-to-face scenario when you have no choice.
You've already exhausted the...
Exactly, exactly. We talked about moving to the left yesterday. Again, immediate feedback, right direction, wrong direction, tonality, emotion, and it's just timed better. I can physically get in and out of my perfect voicemail message in well less than 60 seconds. And I can say it in exactly the tonality that I want. So number 1 is instant feedback. Number 2, in the case of cold calling, and whether it's a cold call or a cold prospect emails, people don't care if they don't respond to your email. They don't care if they don't respond to your text. Why? Because in their mind, your text is frivolous and stupid, and you hit one button and sent out 10,000 of them. So if I ignore it, no big deal, right? It's impersonal. It's not unique to me. Right. You send out 10,000 of these. What do I care, right? Why am I going to send it back? What made me feel special about your email? In most cases, nothing. Dear valued prospect, right? Dear business owner. And we don't care if we don't respond to an email. In fact, interestingly enough, and as I alluded to earlier in the conversation, if you get 3, 4, 5, 6% response or open on your email, you should be dancing in the street. Right? They'll never, if you've got a link, forget it. You'll never get that opened, ever. You better have everything. And by the way, don't send me War and Peace on your email because the vast majority of people read their email where?
On their phone?
On their cell phone. So if they can't see it in giant fonts, immediately, they're never going to see it. Again, most people don't even read it. They delete you from the subject line. So when people are getting 200 and 300 and 400 emails a day, you don't even get the privilege of being read. If they don't know your name and they don't know your subject line, you're done. You have no choice. But when you leave a voicemail message done correctly, and we do a whole session on cold calling, we're not going to get into there, but we have a mechanism that 100% of the cold calls that you leave will be listened to in its entirety. 100%. And the vast majority of that 100% listened to will call you back. Right? That's a teaser when we do our cold call session. All right, so if I do a cold call, so if I send an email cold call or a text blast cold call or something like that, people don't really care. It's not unique to them. You hit one button, it went out to 9 zillion people. But there's still a little little bit of hint of professionalism in the world. It's small, but it's there. That when I leave a message for you personally, hello, Mr. Jones, I'm Don Zavis, blah-bitty, 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 blah-bitty. I am leaving a personal message for you from me. There is a certain business professionalism. There's a certain business acumen. There's a certain business courtesy. There is a recognition of rudeness if you don't respond to somebody's phone call that you don't have in an email situation. So when you get a hold of somebody that you've left 2 or 3 messages, what's the first thing they say? When you just by a miracle catch them, what's the first thing they say?
Oh,
they apologize.
Oh, my bad.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I hadn't gotten back with you. When was the last time you sent somebody an email, they blew you off, and they started to email back, I'm so sorry, I blew off your email? They never say that. So there's a little, small bit of business professionalism in the world. Why? Because if I do something special for you, not one button that goes out to 11 million people, you, specifically you, there is an expectation of professionalism. I return 100% of the calls that I get. 100%. Even if it's a sales call. And what I'll say is a couple things. I might say, you know what, Bob? I don't know if I'm a good prospect for you, but I got a couple minutes. Give me your pitch. Because if you got a better mousetrap, well, hell, I want your better mousetrap. The only thing that I ask is at the end of the call, let me tell you what I do.
Ooh.
And you may be a good prospect for me. That seems fair, doesn't it? If you're going to pitch me, I get to pitch you. 100% of the calls I get, I respond to. Again, why? Because we're social creatures. We survive in an area of interpersonal relationship, not this random 10 zillion emails or text messages or all the stuff that are out there. That's not it. Professional selling is face-to-face, eye-to-eye, belly-to-belly. It's no different. That will never go away. As long as human beings are human beings, in my humble opinion, that will never change. That's why if I'm going to make a cold call, I want it to be a call, not an email. Because if I'm making a cold call and I call company A and I talk to Sally's secretary and say, Sally, I got Joe Szymanski's name as being the contact person for blah, 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 blah. Is that correct? She's going to say one of 2 things. What are they? Yes, that's correct. Great. Can you put me through? Or she's going to say, no, he doesn't do that. You really want to talk to Mr. Smith. So if I could only make one cold contact to a company, I want it to be a call. Not a text and certainly not an email. Definitely not a Facebook or anything like that. You know, when was the last time somebody reached out to you on social media and you took it really seriously? Right? Oh my God, they want to be my friend. Oh my God, I have 14,000 friends. Everybody loves me. No, they don't. They couldn't pick me out of a lineup. Right? I could be laying dead on the side of the road. They're riding on their car. They're just going to swerve around so I don't splash my blood up on their grill. Right? What we call friends, let's just say, isn't the same as it was when I was younger. Cold calls. The phone is your best friend. Now, people are afraid. I actually had a guy when I was doing this session, he put his hands up and he says, well, what if they answer the phone? Really? Do you know what I do? Do you understand why you're in this class? That's what you want. Even when you send out a BS email, what is the hope? That he's going to respond, probably, likely, initially on the phone. So you're already over here, and I'm already well ahead of you. I'm starting for where you ultimately hope to end up. And I'm starting there. Maybe they just might pick up the phone. You never know, right? But you'll never know that on the email. You'll never know that on the email. Nobody gets caught by surprise. Oh, I just happened to be accidentally responding to your email. Come on. No. The phone is your best friend. Let's keep going. Voice time versus screen time. Voice time versus screen time. When you connect with somebody on the phone, you might have moments at best, right? Your conversations are very curt on the screen, emails, texts, things like that. They're very perfunctory, they're very curt, very little relationship developing. And that's why when you look at the time and motion studies, most of screen activity is what we call less than 5 minutes. So if you remember, less than 5 minutes, right? Remember the old mathematical sign, less than 5 minutes? If you understand voice, it's more than 5 minutes. And the reason for that is once you start the conversation, you'll talk about everything. Right? I can't tell you how many times we'll go in the conversation and people seem, the number that I carry, the phone that I carry like a 6-gun, is a 248 number. That's for my Michigan office. Everybody who works for me has 248, right? Because we generated from Michigan. And I'll have people say, oh, 248, you must be from Michigan. And I would say, yes, I am. How do you know that? Oh, I used to live in Lansing. Really? I lived in Bloomfield Hills. Oh, I moved out to, I live in Portland right now. God, I love Portland. I'm in Tucson right now, blah, blah. Oh, by the way, now 10 minutes into our conversation, I'm actually calling for a reason. Here it is. And they're like, oh, yeah, geez, I'm so sorry. Yeah, go ahead, tell me which one. How many times have you had that phone call, even though you expected it to be 1 minute? Ends up being more. Why? Because that's where the interaction takes place. That's where the relationship building takes place. You don't build relationships by text, certainly not by email. We were all brought up to question that. Right? Nowadays, oh my God, if you have a link on something like I alluded to earlier, oh, don't open it, right? I can't tell you, every day the Nigerian prince promises me money. One day I'm going to call him and say, listen, here, can you send it to my bank? I'll pick up a bag. I'll go to the airport. Hand me a bag of cash. Right? Nowadays, we trust no one and nothing. But at least that face-to-face conversation allows us to break through a lot of these distrust and defensive barriers to at least be able to have a conversation. Right? I'll talk about my grandkids. That's not by accident. I'll talk about Mrs. Zavis. That's not by accident. I'll talk about my daughter, my love of fly fishing that I was having about. I'll talk about all those things. Why? Because that gives them the glimpse of me that makes them feel, you know what? Don's not a bad guy. He's like me.
He's human.
He's a stupid, doting grandfather. Doting, stupid. Hi, guys. My daughter actually watches this. Right? Doting grandfather. They know that. Voice, 5 minutes or more. Screen time, much less than 5, generally less than 1. But you watch how many times you're able to get out, unless you're leaving a voicemail. If you're leaving a voicemail, you can get out less than a minute. But look at the timer when you're actually talking and see how that actually does. The phone is your best friend. Your voice is warmer. Your voice is warmer. If you look at all of the things that David talked about, all the body language stuff. Now on the phone, you don't have that. You don't have the body language on the phone. You've got the tonality and the speed and the inflection. You've got all the things that we talk about on our body length. But there's a warmth that comes out of your conversation. So when I say, tell me more about that, and I love asking permission. Permission is great because when you ask somebody's permission, the perception is they're in control. So when I say, would you be okay if I asked you a couple of questions? They're like, sure. Would you be okay if I take some notes? Oh, absolutely. Here's use my pen and paper.
Let's go.
Again, if you ask permission, the perception is they're in control. It's like the person that's talking in a conversation, the perception is they're in control. The reality is they're not. The person listening is in control. They're going to tell you everything you need to know in order to be able to sell them if you give them the space. Again, think about it. Go back to tennis or now pickleball. Where is the ball when you lose the point? It's on your side. So my goal, much like tennis in a conversation, is to keep the ball on your side as often as possible. Why? Because you'll tell me everything that I need to know, not to sell you. But I'm a problem solver looking for problems to solve. And you'll tell me your problems. And then, assuming that I have an answer to your problems, then potentially we could have something. So your voice is warmer. Again, we're social creatures. When you're talking to someone, so much of who you are and what you are and how you think and how you act, and I tell people all the time, look, I don't know if I can help you. You're a stranger to me. I don't know anything about you. But tell you what, tell me your woes, and if I can, I will. And if I can't, I'm going to say I can't. Are you okay with that? Now, when I tell that to somebody, their defensive posture just drops. Because they're so used to hearing, well, Mr. Jones, if you go with us, we'll definitely take care of your problems and we're going to fix. No, I don't. That's a lie. You know, when your first interaction with a prospect is a lie, no wonder they don't trust you. Well, Mr. Jones, you're with a winner and we can definitely help you. Well, how do you know that 30 seconds into the conversation? He could not have any money. He's not the decision maker. They've got no compelling reason to buy. And you're now telling them how you're going to help them? If your first interaction is a lie, no wonder they don't trust you. All right, let's keep going. Your voice is warmer, all right? With your cell phone, you're always at the office. The phone is your friend. With your cell phone, you are always at the office. You're always at the office. You know, because there was so you go back into the 1960s and the Mad Men time. And if you think about, I remember and my daughter was born in 1989. And when she was born in October, they had literally just come out with the first cell phones, right? They looked like the big World War II phones, 60 cents a minute. It cost me $50 a month to have it. 60 cents a minute, and I had a 2-hour battery time. I was living large. Oh my God, I got this 97-pound rock. I had to buy a separate briefcase to put this big son of a bitch in, right? But I had a cell phone. Hey, guess where I'm calling you from, right? And they're like, yeah, I know, Don, you're in your car. Yeah, I've heard it 97 times, right? But the thing was, I remember having a client tell me, Don, why do I need a cell phone? I got a phone in my office. I got a phone at my house. Why do I need another one? Now, keep in mind, in 1989, they'd be like, yeah, you got a point.
Yeah.
You got a point, right? If I'm in the car, I really can't do anything. Nowadays, oh my God, if you don't have a cell phone, you're a pariah. Oh my God, you know, you are the lowest of the low. Join us here in the year 2000.
Right.
And yet, that's why even the industry had to change the name from cell phone to smartphone, because so few people use it as a phone. You look at most of the bills that people have. You know, 14 minutes of phone call, right? You know, 9 million gigs of data, 15,000 text messages, right. And yet it's a phone. It's like, why do you put numbers on it? Nobody even uses the numbers, right? Don't even make it a phone. Just make it a little computer, right? This is my little computer because I don't use it as a phone. And yet, so that's why you're always at the office. I tell people, answer every single call. Answer every single call. Most people, why do you think most people don't answer the calls? They don't want to talk to you. Well, there should be nobody in your world that you don't want to talk to. You should pay your bills on time. You should make crap loads of money. You should have every person that calls you should be somebody when you answer the phone go, oh my God, I was so happy you called. Imagine how great your world would be. It's every person you called, you answer the call with, oh my God, I'm so happy you called. And if you want to know who invented voicemail, buyers, to hide, right? The messages, to hide, right? They weren't doing all this stuff to make it better and more efficient. So that's why if you're always at the office, I carry my cell phone like a 6-gun. The only time that I will not answer a call is I will not be rude to a person that I'm likely on the phone with. I'm not a big fan of text. I will text if there's really no better choice. And if I texted you this morning, right? Sitting across from me was a coaching client. But I wanted to make sure because I know there was one day coming up, and I thought it was today, where we weren't going to be able to film. Now, would I have normally text? No. Most of the time do I text you? And I love you, right? I'm a phone guy. Again, the phone is your best friend. And where everybody thinks, how many times have you talked, you'll hear somebody's voicemail and they'll say, well, please leave a message. But for faster service, send a text. Well, how could a text be faster? I mean, really, how could a text be faster? I'm not fast. My daughter's like boom, 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 right? I'm not. I'm like Hunt and Peck, but on a much smaller scale. But I'm great on the phone. I can make sure in that minute I cover everything I want. I'm going to make sure I use the perfect words that accurately depict what I want to say. Again, the phone is your friend. But there's an ideological change that needs to take place. Because people who are old like me, we grew up on the phone. To us, the phone is a comfortable spot. My daughter never talks to anybody on the phone. Never. Never. There were times when she was younger, and when I mean younger, I don't mean 33 like she is now. And Cash, you know this because you know this, right? She'd be in her mid-20s. Dad, can you call my landlord and tell him I'm having a problem? Why aren't you calling them? Well, people do things when you call them. And being the doting father, I'm like, no problem, sweetie, I'm on top of this, right? But the reality is that, you know, in this case, if the phone is your friend and you use the phone as your greatest #1 tool and you carry it like a 6-gun, like we mostly do, you're never not at work. You're never not at work. I encourage people all the time. Now, I know I get a lot of pushback and people are going to respond and say, oh, Don, you can't work 24 hours a day. How's that working out for you? How's that working out for you? See, the mistake a lot of people make is when I make this statement about you're always at the office. See, in my world, there's no distinction between work and play. There's no distinction. To me, this isn't work. I get to hang out with my friends and talk to people that I don't even know that are watching me. And I call this work. This is fun. Why would I not want to do this? I'm going to turn 62 in August. I've told this story, and I know Simona's heard this a couple times. Back when I turned 60 years old, I had an associate of mine say, well, when are you going to retire? From what? I get to do what I love, hang out with my friends, get paid very handsomely, and I want to stop this. Why? Again, if you love what you do, there's no distinction between work and play. So I don't stop work because I don't stop play. To me, this is just fun. And if you get that ideology, this makes sense, right? If you understand that the phone is your tool, your phone is your greatest mechanism, you're always at work. If you're tethered to your email, or you're tethered to your computer, or your printer, or special software, or blah-bitty, 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 well, then you're creating a situation where you're never always at work. You're going someplace else to be at work. No, don't be that. The phone is your best friend and your best tool, and that's why you're always, 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 always at work. This is one of my faves. This really only came into the lexicon here, recently in the social media world. And if you look at the Instagrams of the world and these like what I call sniglet sites, right? Like the Twitters, limited characters, fast turnover. You look at Instagram, and my wife, when she looks at Instagram, she just scrolls, right? It just looks at each thing for 1 second. Why? Fear of missing out. We're now at a point where if we don't have 19 different software packages, and oh my God, I had one guy tell me like 5 years ago, oh my God, Don, you got to be on Foursquare. If you're not on Foursquare, people are not going to know where you are. How many of you use Foursquare? How many people know Foursquare, what that is? It was basically a site that GPSed you wherever you are. Don's at McDonald's, right? Next day, Don's at McDonald's. Right? Next, Don's at McDonald's. Somebody's going to go, geez, Don, why don't you throw a Burger King in there every so often?
It's like a checking in site, right?
It was, just checking in, right? Here it's like, and people that, every 3 minutes say, I'm taking a picture of me, and, I was standing over there 5 minutes, but I'm here now. No, that fear of missing out stuff is silly because you can't chase that dragon long enough and fast enough. You can never buy a better enough phone. Right? My wife wants the new iPhone that they haven't even come out with yet. Right? And I said, and I'm not a cheap guy, right? She's got the iPhone 11 Pro because at the time that was the biggest and best, right? Yeah. And now they've got the, I think it's like the 14XY or something, right? Can take pictures of the moon.
Max Pro.
Yeah. And so I said, okay, well, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, go get what you want. And I just casually said, well, what's it got? And she's like, well, it's just better. And I said, oh, okay, well, I'm sure it is, right? Each iteration gets better. I'm like, but what's better? Well, it does things better. Okay. Like? Finally, the conversation ended was, I'm getting in, tough crap for you, all right? But the idea ultimately is you can't chase this dragon fast enough. There's no technology because there's a new one coming down the pike. Mm-hmm. But see, you don't need that. You have exactly what you need right then and there. The nice thing about it is, even though we carry our phones like a 6-gun, your client does too. Oof. Your client does too. There was a period of time where if your client wasn't in the office, you couldn't get them. There was a period of time if I wasn't home, the phone would just ring and ring and ring. And if somebody from the Zavis house didn't pick it up, long before even, remember the little cassette tapes you used to put in your answer machine, right? The Zavis family's not home. We had Mr. T. We had a recording of Mr. T. It was really cool. But the idea ultimately is you can't chase this fast enough. You can't buy enough technology. You're always going to be behind the gun no matter where you are, what you use, how you use it. You can never make it better faster. You're not missing anything. All the stuff that you think is old and crappy, I'm telling you, is more than satisfactory because all the things you're convinced you're missing, you're really not. The fear of missing out isn't in place when the phone is your best friend. If the phone is your best friend, we don't care about all that because all this stuff is still over here. No matter what it is, no matter what social media, what it is, the goal is from here is to get you on the phone or preferably get you face to face. So no matter what the fear of missing out is telling you about the new fuzzy, bright, twinkly thing, you don't need it. You don't need a faster computer. You don't need a different phone. You're not broken in any way, shape, or form. You've got everything that you need. There's no excuse. Pick up the phone. Go buy a Yellow Pages. Not buy. Go to the grocery store and pick up a Yellow Pages, the real one. That the pages were yellow and they were print. That's your call list. Start in the middle. Don't start at A, don't start at Z. Everybody starts at A, right? AAA locksmith, gets 9,000 calls a day from people who decide they're going to take no. Start some random place, but start calling. I guarantee if you call 20, 30, 40 people a day, you can knock that out in an hour or two. And done correctly, 20, 30, or 40 people who didn't know you existed before now do. You think you just might make a sale or get an opportunity? Sure. We often say that even the blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then. Be the blind squirrel. All right, let's keep going. All right. People use everything else for bad news. All these technology things were all created as a mechanism for bad news. How many people have you heard that, that broke up by Twitter or by text or got fired by email and all of these other things that just really became a haven for all the stuff that was deleterious and we didn't want? No. We are social creatures. Good news is delivered in person. Bad news is delivered in person. But it's still in person. If it can't be face-to-face, at the very least on the phone. Right? If you can't be there, that's it. I could send my wife 1 million emails a day that say, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And it would be absolutely true. But it would never substitute for a phone call. And certainly wouldn't substitute for ultimately face-to-face. Janet tells me, when you are traveling, I don't care what time it is, before you go to bed, when you're in your hotel room and the day is done, you call me. I don't care what time it is, wake me up. I don't care if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, because if you don't call me, I will know something is wrong. And I'll call her at 2 o'clock in the morning, especially if there's time change differences, and sweetie, I'm in the room, the day is done, I'm missing you, I wish I was there with you, I love you, goodbye. And she'll say, I love you too, and I'll hear a click. That 25-second interchange was more important than anything else in the world because I can't be face-to-face. Face-to-face is the most desirable. The phone is your best friend. You're not missing anything. You don't need the vast majority of what you're being told because it's not true. Now, I'm a product of the product. I only do and coach and train things that I do personally. I love making cold calls, right? To me, it's dialing for dollars. And I don't care if 20 people say no, because eventually that 21st person is going to be saying, oh my God, I'm so glad you called. Where should we write the check? All right, let's keep going. All right, so bad news. All right, the phone is your best friend, all right? You never, ever use the phone unless you have no choice. Now, is it appropriate for me to call somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning that's not my wife when I'm back in my hotel room for the evening? No. No. That is an appropriate time. If I was meeting with somebody for breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, I would send them a text and say, I'm not going to be there, something has come up, I'll reach out to you later in the day. We only use all of this other stuff. So let me go through the litany of what everybody has told me that they don't. I had one guy say, well, we send all of our quotes by email. Well, that's the first thing that you should be doing wrong. You never send your quote by email. Why? Because the first time a client ever sees your price cannot be in a vacuum. Preferably face-to-face, at the very least on the phone. And you say that in the beginning. So, Mr. Jones, if it ever gets to this point, here's how we'll handle it. What I'll do is you and I will get on the phone. I'll send you a copy of our quote, and you and I can look at it right then and there, and I can answer any questions. Mr. Jones, this is the way our company works. If it gets to that point in time where we can come up and we've determined that we want to give you a quotation, we'll actually have the quotation. I'll bring it with me. You and I and your wife will sit down at your kitchen table. We'll run through it, and we can decide what our next step will be from there. So every time they would give me an excuse, well, they want us to send us information. No. They want to get you off the phone, dumbass. You are the brochure. That's it. That's what you tell them. Well, Bob, I'd be happy to, but I'm the brochure. You know, Bob, 10 years ago, we had all kinds of stuff. We had binders, and we had e-blasts, and we had videos, and we had, all this stuff, and we had brochures and flyers. We had so much stuff. And we found out nobody ever looked at it, right? We would send them out all this expensive stuff, and nobody ever looked at it. When I talked to them, they'd ask me the question that was answered in the very information. We said, that's it, we're done. I'm the brochure. You ask me whatever questions you have, and I will be happy to answer it. Again, we use these things when we have no choice. And because most people are lazy. Geez, Don, gas is expensive. Really? You know what's expensive? Poverty. Poverty's expensive, right? Bankruptcy is expensive. Most things that are hard ultimately are expensive. That's why so few people do it. The hard stuff that everybody else doesn't do, as David mentioned earlier in the session, so few people do it because it's hard. Right? I had somebody that we were putting together a marketing campaign. It was going to cost him $1,000 for flyers. And you know what he said? He goes, well, we don't really want to spend that money. What happens if people just throw them out? Well, what happens if one person who doesn't know you exist buys something from you? See, there's a counter for everything, right? Either you're looking for a way or you're looking for an excuse. You get to choose. Right? Now, will that happen? Absolutely. Geez, Don, if I join this networking group, they want to charge me $400 up front and $30 a month. And what if I don't get a lead? Well, Bob, what if you don't do it and your competitor does it and they get a lead? Again, all the things that we talk about and so many of the things that we do where we second guess ourselves, we fill in both sections of the conversation, always tilting towards the negative when you never really need to tilt towards the negative. That's why so much of what we talk about and we do, and that's why this session, the phone is your best friend, is such a critical session because you're not missing anything. Again, the mistake so many people make is that they think that, well, we don't have a great website, and we don't have a lot of brochures and peripherals, and we don't have this, and we don't have delivery trucks. You don't need any of that stuff. Most people don't even care. The vast majority of people, nobody ever called and said, hey, listen, I know that you're a plumber and you got 30 delivery trucks, so I just want to work with the guy who's got the most trucks. I've never, ever heard that, right? Because if that was the case, everybody would just try to have the most trucks, right? One guy gets 30, right? The next guy gets 32. The next guy gets 35. And the guy who has the most trucks wins. No, it's never like that. The phone is your best friend because it's the most persuasive of any of the tools that you have. And that's why no choice. No choice. We only use all of these secondary components or these replacement contact pieces when we have no choice. There's no scenario you can give me where it is not worthwhile to have the phone, preferably face-to-face. I had one guy said, well, a lot of our clients are out of state because we were talking about sending quotes. He goes, well, a lot of our clients are out of state. And I said, what would stop you from jumping on a plane? He's like, well, what if they don't buy from us? Well, geez, I don't know. Maybe you should spend more time on the phone to see if you legitimately have a chance, right? All of these things on the phone. And then ultimately, It's worthwhile to get in a plane, and it's worthwhile to go on a visit. Why? Because if you've done all the correct stuff on the phone, then you have a greater likelihood of the sale. But if you're just one of 97 people sending out a quote, well, what do you think your chances are right now? About 0, right? Don't waste your time. Don't even send the quote. All too many times, people look for ways to cheap themselves out, and really what they're ultimately doing is they're diminishing their likelihood of success. The last and final one is call everybody. Call everybody. Somebody sends you an email, call them. Somebody sends you a text, call them. Somebody gives you a Twitter, call them. Somebody sends you something on Facebook, call them and tell them, Bob, I'm old school. I tell everybody this. I'm old school. I like the phone. I think you're a pretty cool person. I like to talk to Simona. When I talk to Simona, I feel better when I get off the phone. When Simona sends me an email, I don't feel better on her email. Sorry. All right? But I feel better when I talk to her on the phone. I ask her about the kids. She says nice things. I feel better. Tell these people, call everybody. You've got to get them out of this mindset that says there's anything better than the call. So come on down, David. So anybody who's listening, again, when we talk about the phone is your best friend, and again, I'm not saying that anybody else, the social media gurus and everybody else telling you how great online is. This is not a situation of what I call either or. It isn't this or this. All I'm saying is that what has been for a long time has only been this. Right. You've never had the this phone part. You've had the this. And everybody's like, well, you need a new website, and you have more robust social media, and blah, blah, blah. And again, I would ask them, so we want more robust social media for what? So you get more hits. Okay, what's next step? Well, after the hits, they'll go to your website. Okay, that makes sense too. And then what will they do? And then they'll get interested about you. And then what will happen then? And then they say, oh, they'll call you. Oh, they'll call me. Oh, the phone, right? I start where most people hope to end up. So did I do a good job communicating that or do a bad job?
Definitely.
Okay.
The part that I loved about it was sometimes me recognizing that, when you talk about the office and recognizing that, guys, in the same way that we're always available, and your clients are always available as well. And you know what, I think that what you're speaking to, and I think a lot of people unfortunately deal with this, is just there is an anxiety about picking up the phone. And unfortunately, Don is breaking down how we have to get over that.
Yeah.
And if you want to be successful,
well, most people are afraid.
We have to, they're afraid to pick up that phone.
Why would you not want to pick up the phone? I mean, think about it. If you had to pick just, not even a reason, but just a nebulous group, bad news. Right. I don't pick up the phone because it's bad news, right? Either people are going to give me bad news, or I'm going to have to tell them bad news. I didn't pay a bill, somebody's hounding me. All of the reasons why you don't want to pick up the phone, right? Wrong. You can tell a happy, successful person, they will answer the phone every time. I never worry about a bill collector because I pay my bills. I never worry about pissed off clients. Why? Because my clients freaking love me, right? When they call me, they're like, oh my God, Don, I tried your stuff. And I'm like, hold on, let me get a cigar, right? So you can tell me how great I am for the next 45 minutes. Right? So again, you have to be, and that's why I'm saying you're the one that changes it. When they email you, you call them. When they text you, you call them. When they Facebook you, you call them. When they Twitter you, you call them. And that is the only acceptable mechanism, because normally they don't jump back. So what a jump back is you send me something on Twitter, you send me a direct message on Facebook, I call you. Generally, they don't jump back into Facebook to answer Twitter, the thing. Right. They're going to stay on the call because that was the contact you made. And that's what you want. I can get a lot more meat out of a 4 or 5 minute phone conversation than I can get out of and you see people get into these like long, text messages like, do you want to go out for dinner tonight? Right? And then, yes. Do. Where do you want to go? Do. I don't know. What do you want? do. And you've all done it. I've seen that happen,
Yeah,
right?
we all do
I'll
it.
be with people and I'm like, pick up the phone.
Just call.
Just pick up the phone, right? Where do you want to go? I want pizza. Great. Love Pizza Hut. Good. Fine. Campbell, that's it. I'll see you there, 7 o'clock. Boom, we're done. 30 seconds, we're done.
And I think another thing, what we have to recognize is, once again, your ability to differentiate yourself from most people, right? Unfortunately, most people are going to stay on the email track or a social media track, and you're being different. You're actually going to separate yourself from people from when he following what Don is saying, just pick up the phone and call. Wow, actually, I didn't even expect someone to call me right there. Guess what? The first person to reach that person on that voice level
absolutely.
is most likely going to get the sale.
How many times have you called somebody and they said, you know, and they'll be like, oh, I didn't think you're going to answer the call. I'm like, why? Because nobody ever answers the call. Well, I'm special, right? Again, the phone is truly your best friend, but again, it's an attitudinal thing. Because, you know, you've got the Gen Zers and all the different things, and they don't want to talk to people, and they like to hide behind texts and emails and all this other stuff. And then older people don't like technology. My mom and dad are a great example. They got crap loads of money, and they're 83 and 84. If you said, hey, listen, we'll send you an email, my dad would be like, yeah, that's not going to happen. We've never had an email, right? You know, well, can we send you a text? Sure, you can. We probably will get it. We won't know how, because our jitterbug, when we open up our jitterbug, it has the giant, you know, bug-like numbers on it. We don't know how that works. We just know how to make calls. When somebody calls us, we hit the green phone. When we want to call somebody else, we dial a number and we hit the green phone. We know that the green phone and the numbers do something. Nothing else. That's it. You would lose my entire parents as a customer because you don't have an understanding that there's a whole section of the market that's that.
That's that.
And that section of the market, although they are clearly timing out, and you know, maybe in 10 years the market's gonna be different. Yeah. But right now we are social creatures. That face-to-face phone call, you know, when I tell somebody, don't worry, we're gonna take good care of you. I don't know how we're gonna do it, right? But I get the sense that you know, your problem is problems that we've solved in the past. I think we're going to be able to help you, right? That's it. And you're either going to trust me or you're not going to trust me. Now, that's never something, you can't get that whisper in a text, right? You can't in your text say, Don drops his voice, right? And then you put the next line on your text, right? You know, Don leans forward in his chair and looks thoughtfully deep into your eyes. And then you have the next line on your email. That doesn't happen. Yeah. And yet that's why most people struggle in sales, because they don't get this.
And I think I know this. You know, even I know the answers and I know what you're saying. But what this even reminded me was that there's certain people I was talking to that they set the precedent and they're keeping it in this medium, where this just reminded me right now, you know what? I'm having a conversation in this medium. I need to just get directly to a voice medium to speed this up. So definitely just a reminder of like, hey, just get to it.
And there's a lot of stuff that I'll tell you, one of my favorite tools, we do an entire session is when your client, we call it now, are you being ghosted? Because that's that new ghosting word. You want to be unghosted? This is what you say. Hey, Bob, I left a couple of messages for you. I haven't heard back. I'll tell you what, I'm going to stop by your office tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I'm sure you're going to be busy, but I'm going to set aside the whole day to make sure you and I connect, because you said it was so important for you to get my widgets. Thanks.
Oh, they'll call you back.
Yeah, you think so? Because the next call is going to be when you show up at 9 o'clock in the morning and they say, Bob's in a meeting. Yeah, well, that's okay. I called Bob yesterday. I said I was going to be coming. I said if there was a problem with me waiting here until he was free to call me back. He hadn't called me back, so he must be okay with me waiting here. Do-do-do-do. Right, I'll open my lunch. Do-do-do-do. Now, I know that sounds like a terrible thing to do, but the reality is that I need tools and techniques. You will get a call. Here's the other way you get away from being ghosted. Yeah. You find out what his boss's name. Woo. His boss, the owner of the company, and this is what you say. Hey, listen, Bob, I've left a couple messages for you. I hadn't heard back. We got another name on our profile here. It's Joe Wingerwanger. I'll tell you what, I get the sense that you might not, the reason you're not calling me back is because you're probably not the right contact person. Here, I'll reach out to Joe this afternoon. I'll tell him I reached out to you a couple of times and you never called me back, and maybe he's the right person for you to talk to. right? Yeah. Now, I've had people go, wow, Don, that's a dick move. Okay, fine, then don't do it. Do it your way. But I'll get a call. Oh, no, don't call, don't call Mr. Jones. Right? All I wanted you to call back, but I'm not being mean, right? You see how I said, right? I left some message for you. You didn't call me back. You must have a good reason, right? Air quotes, right? You must not be I got on my profile another person. I'll call that other person, tell them that I reached out to you a bunch of times and you never responded back, and maybe they weren't the right contact person. That's why I'm calling you. How do you think his boss is going to handle? Hey, I got a call from this Don guy. Right, said he called you a bunch of times and you ignored his call?
Yeah, what's up with
That's not the kind of company we are, right? We call everyone. We're ethical and honest. That's why? Because he's old. The owner of the company's in his 70s and 80s, and when you blew somebody off, that was rude. Back in the days where there was a rude, now, Christ, anything goes, right? No, we're successful because we do things that other people won't do. We won't lie, cheat, and steal. But we will call her right up to the line. So any parting thoughts before we close for today? Today was a great session. I did a fabulous job on this, by the way, too.
Maybe what are some things that stood out to you? Too?
Yeah, we got a couple people stood out. So what did you get from today? We'll pick a couple people in the studio audience.
Yeah. Well, I like what you started out with, Dave, about let's see. Now I got to read my writing.
Oh, you mean when you send an email to somebody, they never contact you back and you tell them that they're the wrong person?
No, it's just that half of the sales is just showing up. And that, making the decision
Absolutely.
to do that.
Sure, I'm going to be in sales. I'm going to do the hard things that I need to do to be in sales. And that's why so many people, they get in sales by default or they get into it by accident and they don't, and I don't know what they think, but I will tell you, sales is hard. You're frequently alone. You're frequently talking to people that may or may not want to do business with you. And I often say, even if you were giving it to them for free, they want it for free and they want you to pay them for it. So it is certainly challenging. So Simona, what did you get from today?
I definitely like the sifter.
I like that too. That was cool. And again, but you have to, and I think David really said it well, you've got to give them the space to say that. Because I believe you're kind of sifting through the words, you're sifting through the language, you're sifting through the body language, you're shifting through the inflections and the things that are non-said.
Right.
But you have to give them the space to do that.
Definitely.
So that was a great takeaway. And I will tell you that what you got was gold. It is very hard to impress me in this business. I had not heard that. And I only steal from the very best. So when you see me do it in the beginning or in the future and pretend like it's mine, it's really David's. So you'll know that. So anyways, that being said, thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate you joining us. As I said in the beginning of the session, I always say, it's really not lost on us that there's a million things that are vying for your time, your attention, online, in the world, post-pandemic. And the contribution and commitment that you're making to your sales education, we believe, will come back to you many times over. So thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. And John Waechter here in spirit. And we